do you think that that is being done because they want to send that, like a subliminal signal to you, meaning that on one level you actually pick up on some of these things, and that kind of in one level actually disempowers you because you know that you're living in a kind of a staged fantasy world that they create, basically?
Yeah, they want to imbue hopelessness in people. So they want to destroy religion. So one of the goals of World War II was to take the focus of Jesus and put it on Hitler.
How do you mean?
Which they did.
How do you mean?
Well, there was a massive focus on Jesus in late 1800s and before World War I and before World War II. And World War II really was the death knell to focus on Jesus, and then people got fascinated with Hitler and his personality cult, and his escape or not escape, his death or not death, and was he still alive, and was he in the Andes, and all this sort of stuff. It's been dragged on and on and on, and the focus on Hitler in the media is far more than focus on Jesus. So, they've even taken the focus of Easter onto Hitler. Hitler's code name was Mr. Rabbit. So Mr. Rabbit's the Easter bunny. So when we eat the chocolate egg at Easter, we're supposedly now eating a piece of Hitler as opposed to a piece of Christ. Okay.
Well, that sounds interesting.
They take it right into popular culture, and even what's that MI6 band, the Beatles? They were their song "Yellow Submarine" is actually a song about Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun's escape out of Berlin.
Okay, really? Interesting.
Yeah.
But I just want to interject and say, basically express my own opinion and say that I think that they've also have had a great deal of instrumentation. Now, I'm talking about the elite now in regards to creating and setting up the different organized religions, and I see that as a part of the occult agenda itself. I guess that you wouldn't agree on that note then.
No, I do. Like the CIA basically controls Christianity, and the KGB basically controls the Islamic religions, and they are used as voting blocks, especially in times when war wants to be created. When they're ready to create the next war, they'll use the Christian voting bloc to vote for George W. Bush, which is, a huge mistake. And then they'll use the Islamic voting bloc to vote for some warring leader in the Middle East, who will then help to create a war over an oil field that America/Israel/central bank wants to take over for further world domination. So because Iraq had, I think it was the second biggest oil resource in the world, it had an American agent installed. His name was Saddam Hussein, and he was run from the 1950s by George Herbert Bush.
I want to talk about the aspect of the reason why some of this stuff is going on in regards to how actually the people within the elite thinks, and I heard a pretty interesting thought the other day that again many people tie back all of these bloodlines into the ancient world. We could talk about pharaohs or the Egyptian dynasties or whatever. We can go very far back at least. And what was going on there, basically, as we know at this point, was major inbreeding. And again, this is still something that is going on within the royal families, of course, because again, they keep to the same pattern, they do the same things. And the suggestion there, of course, is that a sort of mental disease at some point occur when this is going on, meaning that there actually is kind of a medical, physical thing in regards to the inbreeding, and these people are actually, clinically insane, so to speak. What do you think about an idea like that?
Well, in New Zealand we have something called a state house, where people who are dependent on the government for a living live in a state house. And if the British royal family was living next door in a state house, you'd ask to have them removed. It appears that the mother has 4 children to 3 different fathers, that the father had sex with his youngest son's wife and produced the child Princess Louise, and then murdered the daughter-in-law of his eldest son, and then had multiple affairs and produced illegitimate children himself, which he's acknowledged. So, if the British royal family were living in a state house next door, you'd ring the government up and complain and ask to have them moved.
Right.
So you could call that clinically insane.
Yeah, I mean, something is going on there, and I guess that what I'm trying to understand here also, because of all the things we've been talking about here is, why this kind of mindset from the beginning has arose, or why it is there, or what the driving force even is to that extent. Because again, this isn't traits that are commonly, at least, recognized as being kind of something regards to being a human being. This is something else.
Well, you're talking about the well-advertised lizard thing?
No, that's not what I mean. I'm just meaning that what we define, as a human being in that regard, kind of doesn't seem to apply when we're talking about the elite. I'm talking about certain kind of morality. I'm talking about...
Yeah, well, it's interesting that morality seems to be, at least in part, the product of working for a living. And when they're given everything from start, and they're born fabulously wealthy, and they never have to work a day in their life, and they've got complete, utter and total media support, the judiciary will never charge them or never convict them, and they've got immunity from everything, and that everyone in high positions is either their relative or their employee, and that they have total control over all the elevated people in Britain and Europe, and in some cases America, as in the case of George W. Bush, then morality is for the masses, and not for the oligarchical elite.
Huh. Yeah, it's something that we should follow, but they shouldn't do it. Morality is for the masses. So, the question is, what do you do about that? Well, the first thing to do is to have an honest media. And we all know that the media is completely and utterly and totally corrupt. And it's basically controlled through shame of the people in the media. And the less contentious stories that a person in the media produces, the more they are advanced. And the more shame a person in the media has, the more they're advanced. Like, we've got a case in New Zealand with a guy called Paul Holmes, who's an alcoholic, rabid drug user, bisexual, married his call girl, raised his stepdaughter and supplied her with methamphetamines, and now she's on her way to jail. Her sentence is about 6 months late, but she's been convicted. And he has been promoted to the highest media position in New Zealand for the last 15 years. He is the worst father in New Zealand. He's an alcoholic, bankrupt drug user of any drug, and every drug, multiple drug dealers, and he is the state TV and radio interviewer. So the more shame you have on a person in the media, the more they are promoted, because they will then cover for the people in government who are shamed by their own histories. Right.
And there's an agreement between politicians and the media that they won't expose each other. And they don't expose each other because they're both equally shamed and shameful.
Exactly.
So that's how it works.
What you're talking about here is a network, and I guess that police forces and stuff like that actually work on uncovering at least some of the pedophilia that is ongoing. They also notice this pattern that this is about they set up a network basically, and they protect each other in order for no one to fall down or take the blame.
Yeah, well, I'll give you an example in New Zealand that's just been in the media and the judiciary recently. There was a guy called Clint Rickards. He was a mongrel mob gang member in the Hawke's Bay, and he was used by the police for 18 months to dob in all his gang member buddies. Then he went to Trentham and was trained by the police, and within 4 years he began raping, and he raped at least 34 women in Rotorua alone, and then he was promoted to he was also involved in pedophilia and drug dealing, methamphetamine. Then he was promoted to the area commander of Auckland Police, which is New Zealand's biggest city, and the assistant commissioner of police in Auckland. So he was New Zealand's worst ever rapist and a pedophile. He was promoted to Auckland's top police position, and his buddies were charged and convicted, and he was never convicted. And he was New Zealand's worst ever police officer, not charged. So he was advanced because he was not dobbing in the politicians who are involved in pedophilia, like Jonathan Hunt, who was the Speaker of the House of Parliament and is now New Zealand's High Commissioner to Britain. He likes 12-year-old Indian boys, and he actually sent the account for sex on 5 different occasions with 12-year-old Indian boys, and he sent it to Helen Clark, and the government paid the bill.
So
can you get more corrupt than that?
no, exactly. I mean, but who? I mean, I want to ask who is, and these cases that you're talking about now are these open in the mainstream media in New Zealand? Has this been confirmed there, so to speak?
Yeah, the cases have all been confirmed. The true information has all been silenced. Like Operation Austin actually busted the area commander Clint Rickards, but failed to get a conviction. And a whole lot of their information was suppressed, including the Clint Rickards rape of 34 women in Rotorua. So, Clint Rickards is now hugely shamed, but he's been kicked out of the police, or basically he was asked to voluntarily resign.
Right.
But he was given approximately a $2 million payout, and he was stood down for 3 years on full pay, and his car was upgraded to a brand new Falcon during that time.
Isn't that nice?
And the photo of him has the people in the house just below him, I think he had control of that house, were busted for methamphetamine supply, and he's out front mowing his lawn.
Sheesh. God. Oof.
I mean, New Zealand is totally corrupt. It's basically a mafia country that presents itself as all pure, but we have the most corrupt government, the most corrupt judiciary, and the most corrupt police force, and the most corrupt social services in the world. All the social policy in New Zealand was designed in Russia, and as far via social policy in the parliament, were essentially controlled by Vladimir Putin. And Putin lived in New Zealand in Wellington, in the capital city, from 1980 to 82.
Really?
Under the assumed name Alexia Putin, and he was a fisheries inspector and a cultural attaché.
Tell us a little bit more about the connection between New Zealand and are we talking about KGB, or are we talking about Russia as a government? What are we?
KGB. We're talking about KGB, and we're talking about Comintern agents. Like Stalin was helping to train 2 prominent Comintern agents in New Zealand. Comintern means Communist International.
Okay.
And you only